got a cat on my hand. She's using my hand as a pillow. Yeah. I got a cat on my hand, and she's using my hand as a pillow. Penelope. When she sees my little hand, she goes to bed, and right away she's in slumberland. Yeah.
Ladies and gentlemen, we got it.
I'm not a crook. I've earned everything I've got. Yeah, good.
Mr. Gorbachev.
You didn't build that.
Mr.
Yeah, good.
Tear down this wall.
Your favorite president?
Tear down this wall.
I can see Russia from my house. Pokemon go to the polls.
Ask not
Yeah, good.
what your country. He did say well alive.
Hello! And welcome back.
A chicken in every pod?
A chicken? In every pod?
Sock it to me? I couldn't remember the phrase sock it to me. I was like, laugh in. Laugh into me?
Sock it to you? Sock and boppers
Sock
to
it.
you?
Tomato?
Suck it to me?
Suck a tomato?
Now, you might be wondering what we're referencing, and that is nothing. We're having a stroke. No, we're referencing a thing in political history. What?
Why are we talking about political history, though? Why would we do that?
I don't know. I really think we should not, and we should just focus on
Pod racing.
pod racing. Kim Kardashian's dad's hologram,
Right?
and that's it.
Welcome to a Kardashian in every pod race. Our new podcast explicitly about the holographic afterlife of Robert Kardashian, Juice, and the fictional racing sport from Star Wars Episode 1, Phantom Menace, pod racing. That's what this episode's about.
Yeah. So please unsubscribe.
Please unsubscribe now.
And okay. And then the sock it to me. That's a thing that Richard Nixon did.
Yeah, it was on an episode of Rowan and Martin's Laugh-In, which was the the Chapo Trap House of the late 1960s. It was the cutting edge political satire that we all loved and needed in those dark days. And they had a running bit where somebody would say "sock it to me," and they'd get hit with a pie or something.
It was the slow jamming the news of
Yeah.
of that time. So you can search and see.
But so Nixon did a cameo, which nobody expected him to do, and he said "sock it to me," which was actually like he read the line wrong. It's supposed to just be "sock it to me," but he read "sock it to me," and they're like, "That's funny. We're gonna keep that in."
Yeah, we love it.
We love Richard Nixon here. This is a pro Nixon show. Nixon.
Yeah. Use offer code Nixon.
Use offer code Nixon at wiretaps.net. I don't know.
Okay. So we are back. So yesterday was Halloween.
Yeah. Yesterday was All Hallows Eve.
The day where the dead come out and
sock it to me.
sock it to you, tell you to register to vote.
Yeah, register to Ghost.
Pokemon goes to the polls. So that was yesterday. We had a lot of fun.
Yeah, we did.
We went to a haunted drive-through that was for social distancing, and it was great because they rolled down the windows and they were holding candy buckets on sticks, kind of, and then they would just stick it in your window and just pour a bunch of candy on you.
Stick it in my window.
Stick it in my window.
Yeah, we have so much candy.
Yeah, so if you look on my Instagram and TikTok, etc., I posted videos of our cat Penny going crazy for all the candy.
Where could they find those?
At my TikTok is Lucia_Fasano69.
Hilarious.
Because for some reason all the other Lucia Fasanos were taken. Imposters. And then on Twitter and Instagram at just Lucia_Fasano. I think that Penelope, so we had this giant pile of candy, and I think that the bright colors kind of looked like birds, because she was just, if you see in the video, she's sniffing all the candy, and she's her eyes are all dilated.
It really freaked her shit out.
Yeah.
She was really, really on one about the candy.
So it's very adorable. And then our dogs were Beanie Babies. We put little TY tag on them, so that was great. We had a couple of trick-or-treaters, social distancing style, and Kyle was a Bavarian boy.
Well, I was a Bavarian guy.
Okay.
I was a man. I was an adult man.
I did not see evidence of you being a man.
What about my 5 o'clock shadow?
I don't know. Okay, that's an Italian boy thing.
Yeah,
so I guess
exactly.
that's okay. So he was the little Bavarian boy.
Well, okay.
And I was just a cat. Like, I had a cat face mask from Daiso, or as my mom says it, Italian style, Dazio. And then a hat with ears. So very simple and safe. We got pumpkin spice lattes. We watched Nicolas Cage in a movie.
In Color Out of Space.
Color Out of Space. Mm-hmm. That was some great Nicolas Cage.
It was a great day. A great time was had by all.
Yeah, we kind of blocked out the impending election.
Yeah, we took the day off.
Yeah.
And now we're back on.
Yeah. And so we've missed you all.
So much.
And now we're recording on November 1st.
Yeah.
Dia de los Muertos. And we are all kind of gearing up for
the big game.
Yeah, we've voted. It's already been counted according to California. I mean, I don't trust anything, but apparently it has been.
It doesn't tell you when it's been counted. It just tells you when it's been
received.
Like registered, like accepted. Okay. Because technically they'll accept it, and then I think they put it into a big box, and then they kind of go through the counting process, which they don't track as assiduously. But our ballots have been received and accepted.
In California, in Los Angeles, we've got some interesting propositions like Prop 22. There have been so many ads, you may have even heard of it wherever you're listening, about Lyft and Uber and Postmates, about, like, yes, to make them be...
Yeah, let me explain.
You explain.
Also, the joke I was going to make is we had some interesting propositions, like this wealthy man who offered us $1 million for one night of passion.
Yeah. Which will be on Tuesday, One Night of Passion.
One Night of Passion.
I will say the reason that Kyle interrupted me and said, let me explain, is because Kyle has worked as a Postmates driver. And there's an understanding between the two of us as people that have been in a relationship for 10 years that when I sort of trail off like that, it means that I don't really know how to explain it. So... For listeners, just so you know.
Yeah, I'm not mansplaining.
Yeah, he's just regular splaining.
Yeah, I'm just normal splaining. Prop 22 is a response to a law that was passed in California recently called AB5, Assembly Bill 5, which took Uber and Lyft and Postmates and any gig economy company, TaskRabbit if that still exists, and made it so that the people that perform these jobs have to be classified as...
independent contractors?
No. They have to be classified as employees. They're currently classified as independent contractors, which is how these companies basically get away with paying below subsistence wages, not providing any benefits, not providing insurance for the cars, not providing mileage, nothing, because they say they're independent contractors. Which usually an independent contractor, though, is able to do things like set rates for what they charge. They're able to provide decide what services they provide. They have a much greater amount of sovereignty over their workplace than an Uber driver does, for instance.
So they're acting like they're independent contractors, but really they're controlling so much of...
Yeah, it's a bit of a... Yeah. It's because these are new ideas, it's a bit of a gray area, arguably, but they certainly are more like employees than contractors. Mm-hmm. So AB5, which has its flaws, and I'm not a huge AB5 booster because it was sloppily written and it applies to actual contractors a little bit too much, like freelancers in the film industry and things like that. But basically, it forced these companies and companies like them to consider their workers employees instead of contractors. Proposition 22 is an addendum to AB5. Well, it's really a repeal of AB5 that is being promoted by these companies, these rideshare companies.
So, like, even in the Postmates app, it has ads for vote yes on 22.
Yeah, exactly. And
all over TV.
Like, even beyond just the fact that these companies only exist, and these companies will say, like, if we have to treat our drivers like employees, we're gonna go out of business. What they're acknowledging is that they are using labor law loopholes to operate at a loss. These companies don't make money. Something that everyone needs to realize in the tech industry is that companies like Uber, Lyft, even technically Amazon, they don't pull a profit. They operate from speculative investments, not actual sustainable business models. So these companies are basically acknowledging that they are able to operate quarter to quarter by subverting labor laws in order to continue to operate at a loss. And you know what? All right, you found a loophole and you drove right through it. That's how it works, I guess. But we're not going to let companies write our laws to close or to reopen these loopholes, basically. That's not something we should be doing. We should not be allowing, once the legislature has found the loophole and closed it, we should not be allowing companies to come in and reopen it in order to keep operating, especially because part of the language of Proposition 22 says that any further regulation on rideshare companies would require something like a 70% vote from the legislature, which is absurd. That's an absurdly anti-democratic motion. It's frankly ballsy. So vote no on Proposition 22. That's what I got.
So we'll see. There's so much misinformation out there.
Yeah.
So definitely another reason why voter guides from sources that you trust are definitely the way to go.
That's right.
So we'll see about Tuesday, and we are going to be doing an election live stream on the SpecScript Twitch.
That's right. Us, as well as our SpecScript collaborator Chris Hodemy, and a revolving door of fun and cool guests are going to be on the SpecScript Twitch stream, which we'll share out.
This
we'll live and
Tuesday.
See it. This Tuesday.
See you this Tuesday.
see you next Tuesday.
This Tuesday.
I forgot. At 3 p.m. it'll start, and it'll go until everyone's too excited / sad and drunk to move. Probably.
Yeah.
It'll go until it goes. We'll see.
I remember in 2016 we did an election night show, which the picture of me on our cover art for the podcast is me in my sort of Hillary wig. I was dressed up as Hillary. I was going to do stand up as Hillary. That night I had like some chocolate in my pocket that I was going to pretend to stress eat as Hillary. And then it just was getting so bad that I had the chocolate way earlier than I thought I would. Then we had to take the bus back. We were living in Portland at the time.
And we're performing at a bar.
And we took like the wrong bus home.
Yeah, we took a bus going in the wrong direction.
That's how much that night was just like, what the fuck? And the thing is, we voted for Hillary. Spoiler alert. We're not Hillary fans.
No.
It's not a secret. And this ties into the topic of today's episode.
Yeah.
Is that, it really did not seem like there was any chance that she would lose. When we were seeing Bernie and stumping for Bernie in 2016.
Stumping for Bernie.
Which, Kyle got a Bernie for President unofficial shirt in like 2013 or something.
Yeah, 2014, I think.
He was just like, this guy I keep up with, Bernie Sanders.
Like a Teespring shirt.
Yeah, it was like, at first it was like, that's so outlandish that it would be Bernie. And then it was like, hey, I think the country really wants change.
Yeah.
If we play Hillary, we might not beat the next Republican.
It got a little inlandish.
Yeah, exactly. And so, then it was like, okay, Hillary's the nominee. We gotta beat Trump, yada yada. I feel like we've all said that so many times.
Yeah, it's just like, it's a robotic expression at this point.
So, then it was like, voted for Hillary, and there was just no, it really didn't feel like she was gonna lose, especially when we were doing the election show and we had the news and projections behind us, and she was doing really well.
Yeah,
she won the popular vote, and I think part of why people were so blindsided and so hurt, besides that Trump is a bigot, besides that the Republican Party itself getting in office was scary, I think one reason people were so traumatized and disoriented was because of how Trump won. It was
Right.
like, wait a minute, this shouldn't have happened. Like, even if you're not a fan of Hillary, she still won the popular vote. She still, was doing well. Of course, in states that she didn't go and campaign in, that was a big mistake on her part. She was very cocky. But it's still like, one of the reasons we got on the wrong bus was, it wasn't like, how could Trump be president and have won? But it was like, how did this day go from these first results to what we ended up with? Hi, Penny, cat of the show, podcat. So that, I think, brings us to this discussion and why we all need to be open to the fact that this Tuesday the election could go any way. Doesn't mean that that is true democracy or that that's just or right, because we know there's voter suppression. We just learned about gerrymandering in last week's episode. But it could go either way. So let's, Kyle, bring it to our subject for this week.
Yeah, and that's why we're going to talk about the Electoral College.
Boo.
The actual mechanism by which a president is selected.
So it's not a regular college?
Well, I gave them $40,000, so I hope that they give me something in return. I keep having keggers there.
Yeah, let's go get fucked up at the Electoral College.
Yeah, dude. It'd be really funny to have Electoral College, like college swag.
Yeah.
Like a Greek sweater that has Electoral College.
If we had a merch store.
Oh, we should have a merch store.
Yeah, one day.
One day, inshallah. So the Electoral College is a big, complicated subject. So I would like to start by just having you ask some questions about it.
Okay.
And that will be our entry point into discussing it.
Great. Well, so, earlier in the day, we were actually talking about the election. I know it seems weird. And I was saying, what's so frustrating about the Electoral College and gerrymandering, which we talked about, last week, was, a state can choose predominantly one candidate, but those representatives, they could, using the Electoral College, vote for the other person.
In the event of a tie.
Yeah. And I was like, that just feels so unconstitutional. And Kyle went, but it is constitutional.
It's explicitly constitutional.
And then I strangled him. No. And so, it's one of those things, like a lot of things that are very frustrating in America, like, the legality of certain police shootings. And it's like, because these laws and things are written to protect things that don't make any sense.
Things that have their own logic, I'll say.
Things that have their own logic, Kyle shall say.
Which is not the logic that we think it should have. But part of this show is to demonstrate that this stuff is not, it's not
coming out of nowhere.
It's not irrational. It's rational if you understand where they're coming from.
Yeah,
which
is
does
really
not
important.
mean it's good.
It's the expression, know thy enemy.
Yes, exactly.
You have to understand
the underlying logic, understand what they're actually trying to protect, what they actually were thinking. Because otherwise a lot of this stuff seems really absurd. But it's not absurd.
Yeah,
there's reasons behind all of it.
If they can justify it, if they can explain the legality of it.
If you understand what they're actually arguing, you can argue back better.
Yes.
There was just recently a big mask off moment when Senator Mike Lee from Utah tweeted that...
so literally, mask off.
Yeah. He tweeted that America is not a democracy and it shouldn't be. And to a lot of people that seems absurd. But he's making a point that a lot of conservatives make, which is that pure democracy is not a good system. And the American system was set up to avoid pure democracy.
Do they want a republic?
Yeah, that's how they put it. This is a little bugaboo of mine, which is that we're often taught and we discuss the ideas of republic and democracy as if they are in opposition, that they are not. They don't even refer to the same thing. A democracy, and though everything that could be contra democracy, is about where political power comes from. Yes, in a democracy, the idea is that the power comes from the people, the citizenry. Contra an oligarchy, where power comes from a selected few not an elected few, just a selected, powerful few, or an autocracy, which is where there's absolute power held by one person. So this could be a monarchy, or it could be an authoritarian state. Could be Nazi Germany. There's an autocracy.
Where does what's the word auto? Is that like
one?
So
yeah.
Okay.
And then anarchy, where power is not held by any other person than yourself.
Yeah.
Yeah. Tear it down. Tear it down.
Mosh pit.
That's right. Republic. Technically, a republic refers to who owns the government. And this is where the monarchism comes in. Because in a republic, the government is owned by the people. That's what a republic means. It's res publica. It means a public thing, a public affair.
Oh.
In a monarchy, the government is technically owned by the crown. It's owned by the royal family.
The crown.
The crown.
Ma'am.
It is technically a privately owned entity. And so this is how you can have, the UK is a democratic monarchy. It's a constitutional monarchy. You can make an argument that the United States is an oligarchic republic. So you can have different combinations of these different things. We're technically democratic. But so the idea behind the U.S. is that it should be both Democratic and Republican, and not just the parties.
But when the
What they
guy
are
from
saying-
Utah said, which was a sort of saying out loud the thing that Republicans often
What they are
feel
saying
in
is that they have
private.
a distrust of democracy as a concept. And so they mediate it through a system called representative democracy, which is what people that make the democracy-republic distinction are talking about when they say republic. They use republic to stand in for representative democracy, not the same thing. A representative democracy is a system where instead of the people voting directly on proposed ideas or laws, although we do have that, we have propositions. It's a direct vote. They vote for a representative of their region or their community who will then go create the legislation. And this was put into the Constitution in order to avoid the risks of mob rule associated with pure democracy.
What's so wrong with the mob?
Far be it from me to criticize our wonderful Italian-American community.
Sorry.
But so that's what they're talking about, is that they don't trust pure democracy. They don't trust the ability of the people to decide for themselves. I am not here to make any claims about whether or not pure democracy would work. It's never really existed. No idea.
So when and how did the Electoral College come to be?
It's always been there.
It's always been there since what?
Since the beginning of the United States as a country.
So George Washington, they were
He was chosen by the Electoral College.
How?
So, the structure of it is that each state, the government of each state, appoints a certain number of electors. They get the equivalent of their House delegation plus their Senate delegation. So, for example, if you're Wyoming, you have one.
I wish I was.
I wish you were too.
Oh.
We'll talk about it. So, if you're Wyoming, you have one representative.
Because you're small.
Because you're small. And 2 senators, because everybody does.
Okay.
So that means Wyoming has 3 electoral votes. That's how that's calculated.
Okay.
So that brings us to 535 electoral votes in the country. Now, you may have heard of a famous number. 538.
Like
538.
Nate Silver.
Like the numbers nerds themselves.
Wow.
So that number is the number of electors that we have to choose the presidency.
Always
538.
has been, always will.
No. It probably will.
Well, definitely not always has
being.
been.
Yeah,
and always and is for the time being unless we change how many.
Unless we add new states at this point.
Okay.
Because right now the number of representatives, like we talked about before, is capped.
Colonize Mars.
Colonize Mars. More likely make Puerto Rico a state.
Mars needs moms.
Mars does need moms. Do you see that Elon Musk is going to have his own laws on Mars?
Yeah.
I think, go for it, bud. Get out of here. Go to Mars.
He just wants to
go be king of Mars.
Have a pedophile Mars time.
Yeah, that apartheid billionaire.
Yeah, if you're a fan of Elon Musk,
look up what apartheid is, and look up where his family is from.
Yeah, look up apartheid and look up Elon Musk, Ghislaine Maxwell.
Yeah, look up Elon Musk Bolivia lithium mines.
Yeah.
More like Elon fuck. So
More like Leon Combs.
Leon comes with a K.
Anagram for his name.
But so the 538, the 3 extra electors come from the fact that Washington D.C. gets electoral votes.
Okay.
As a federal holding, it's something like as many votes as it would have if it were a state, but no more than the least populated state.
Okay.
So whichever is lower is what they get. And so that means they get 3, and that's where you get 538. If Puerto Rico were granted statehood, it would also get votes, but as it stands, U.S. territories do not get electoral votes in the Electoral College. So
Cool.
Puerto Rico, American Samoa, Guam, the U.S. Virgin Islands, none of them get electoral votes.
Yep.
The biggest gets electorally are, of course, California, Texas, New York, Illinois. Florida is pretty good, pretty big one. Pennsylvania has a lot. It's 20, I believe. And then you get your small states, your Wyomings, your Montanas, things like that have barely any 3. So this system is set up early on in it's the Constitution, so it's early on. The states appoint electors. Now, usually, what happens now, and many states have this by law, is that the electors, when they meet up, they just all pick together whoever their state voted for. Which is how most elections, the popular vote and the electoral vote, come together. There's only been, I believe, 4, maybe 5 elections where the person with the fewer popular votes won the presidency.
So the honor system, good faith, like, hey, we're the electors, we're gonna choose who our state chose. There's nothing that is requiring them to do that.
Some states do now require them to.
What states?
I believe Washington does. There's a few others that, especially after 2016, have started to require it by law. Now,
Would
every
that
state
negate a need for an electoral college?
Yes, but because the Electoral College is in the Constitution, it would be easier just to basically make it redundant than to get rid of it entirely.
So how does a state choose an elector? What is an elector?
It's somebody who's not an elected official currently, basically. There's all kinds of ways that they do it. Sometimes it's like a patronage thing. I think Hillary Clinton is an elector from New York this year. A lot of times it just goes to party stalwarts that people like. It's, a position of privilege, position of honor.
Who's making that decision?
The state governments are. The state legislature and the governor.
Okay.
They come together to appoint however many they need.
When do they do that usually?
When do they actually appoint them?
Yeah.
I don't actually know. That's a good question. They're all appointed by the election because they need to start voting by early December. Which, by the way, is why we talk about how if there is shenanigans with the election, which is happening the day after tomorrow, there is a strict constitutional timeline to whatever happens. So it's like the Electoral College will meet in early December and vote, which means all voting for every state needs to be done by early December. So you have like 5 weeks to count the votes. But it also means you have 5 weeks to count the votes. So don't let anybody tell you have to stop. They vote in December, and then the Senate is sworn in a few weeks before the president, so that they can, because basically they vote, and then the Congress counts the votes in Washington D.C. and determine that it's all good. They count the votes in early January, right after they're sworn in, and then whoever wins. Now, an Electoral College tie is the situation we were talking about before, last week, with the gerrymandering. So if they come up 269 to 269, nice. Then once the House has counted their votes, then they vote amongst themselves to see who wins. And that's when Trump would win.
And can you explain why Trump would win?
Again?
If that was the situation.
Yeah, we talked about it last week.
Yeah, I just mean...
It would be because it's not just that the House votes. If the House voted on its own, then Biden would win. Because Democrats control the House, and they're likely to continue controlling the House. Instead, they basically do their own mock electoral college, where each state gets a vote. And you have to win the majority of states. And which direction each state goes is decided on by their their congressional representation, their congressional. Oh, there's a fancier word than representation, but I forgot it. Anyway, delegation. Their congressional delegation.
I was going to say that.
Good job. But so that basically they would. So like this, Michigan's the classic example. Michigan, if let's say Biden wins Michigan, but it's 269 to 269. The Michigan delegation would go vote for who they want to win because there's more Republicans and Democrats representing Michigan in Congress. Trump then wins for that purpose. You combine that. Unfortunately, the way that it all shakes out, Trump would win.
That reminds me.
Trump watch. Is he alive?
Yes.
Yeah. So, so the Electoral College was basically invented as a way of preventing pure democracy. The idea was, because already we talk about democracy and democracy manifest. And we talk about how even in the early colonies, white property men could vote.
So they were scared of the tyranny of the majority.
That was exactly right. They were afraid that the mob, basically, not your mob, but our mob.
The plebes
would pass laws that would... Think about the Bill of Rights.
The William of Rights.
It has all these things that are precious, that can't be abrogated, right? Your freedom of speech, your freedom to own a gun, your freedom to not quarter soldiers in peacetime. All these beautiful freedoms that we love so much.
Okay.
Well, you can't be compelled to quarter soldiers in peacetime. You're allowed to choose to.
I can be like, it's like a vampire.
Yeah, exactly. You have to
invite the soldiers in.
That's right. Troops are vamps.
Troops are vamps.
And so the idea behind the Electoral College and the suspicion of democracy in general came from the same place the Bill of Rights did, which was a concern that if all people were choosing, that if 60% of the country wanted to expel every Catholic from the colonies, that they would be able to do so. And so they wanted to put mediating institutions in place.
So there were some, to a degree, there's definitely like a racist, sexist, classist way you could look at fear of tyranny of the majority. Like, they're afraid that the unwashed masses are going to vote against their...
But the success of the Civil Rights Movement was a minoritarian
and
thing.
they also... It's like, it also goes in a way of... hey, we don't want mob rule, because what if that is used in a way that does target
a great example
people besides just rich white men?
A great example was Prop 8 here in California in 2008, where the ability to gay marry was put to a vote, and it was voted illegally, to be made illegal in the state of California.
Yeah.
And the protest, the counter-argument from many people, including myself, was this isn't something you should be able to vote on. This is not a question for democracy.
Yeah.
This is a fundamental right that you have or you don't. And so the idea would be, from the Founding Fathers' perspective, is that the people that make up the Electoral College would be smart, capable, well-educated men, obviously.
Big old honking dicks.
Yeah, with just the wildest, thickest,
greasiest.
I'm just trying to think of a funny word for penis. I just can't think of any funny slang words for penis all of a sudden.
It's okay.
Hogs, possible. The idea was that they would be a mediating influence, so that if the people wanted something that was actually tyrannical, they could have some institutional power to step in and prevent it from happening. Ironically, the Electoral College existed originally to prevent people like Donald Trump from becoming president. The idea was that if the people picked some fucking loon or tried to elect Prince Albert to the presidency, then the Electoral College has a veto power over the presidency. And they can say a Danny DeVito power, talk about the mob, a Danny DeVito power over the presidency to say, no, this is bad. So if the Electoral College actually operated in the way that the Founding Fathers wanted it to, it would have just picked Hillary Clinton in 2016. It would have picked the more qualified, less dangerous, less demagogic candidate.
If there was more transparency and anti-corruption activity in our American politics right now, then we could maybe have more faith in our Electoral College.
Yes.
That's not
but we
the
can't.
case right now. Yeah.
And so that was the basic idea behind it, was to be a mediating influence. Also, this is just a good history thing that people often forget or don't realize. The Electoral College is where the famous 3/5 compromise comes into play. When people talk about slaves, and slaves only, being counted as 3/5 of a person in the Constitution, that wasn't for the purposes of voting, it was for the purposes of Electoral College representation. So when you're counting up the population of your state in order to get your delegation set, each slave would give counted for 3/5 of a person. So the thinking behind the 3/5 compromise was you would think that would be because the North saw them as people, the slaves as people, and the South not. But actually, it was almost the other way around.
What?
The South wanted them all counted as full people.
Oh.
Because then the South would get more votes. It would make their population much bigger.
But the North was like,
But the North
you
was
don't
like-
get to do that.
Was like, they can't vote. So if they can't vote, they can't be represented in the Congress, in the counting, basically. You're not giving them the rights of citizens, so we're not going to count them as citizens. And so they ended up with this compromise where they would be counted as partial votes.
That's so fascinating.
Isn't that crazy? You find a similar thing actually right now with prisoners. Talk about the modern
Slavery.
Read the 13th Amendment. This is a big part of why there are campaigns to let inmates vote. Because inmates are counted as residents of wherever the prison is.
Oh.
But they can't vote in the local elections of where the prison is. So that gives whatever county or city has a prison has a disproportionately higher number of amount of power for their area or their state because their population's artificially inflated.
That's so interesting. Prison abolitionists and prison activists are so incredible. When we went to a Black Lives Matter and Bernie gathering in downtown LA like 2 years ago, there were some great speakers, and a lot of them, either a family member had been in prison or even they had been in prison, and then they dedicated their lives to prison reform. And so definitely, look up what great work people are doing in your area.
Yeah.
It's definitely a thing that I think a lot of people don't even bother to focus on because it's it feels like the last thing we need to worry about. It's like people out of prison have such a low quality of life. Why we can't even think about this, and private prisons and whatever. And we're busy yas queening Kamala, so it's like, how can we critique private prisons? But it really is the type of thing where I think we're going to look back in a couple of years and be like, oh my gosh, this needed so much more attention. I mean, just like how we're just now having any real justice regarding, marijuana laws and having people released from prison from that. There's so many lost lives of people that are just in prison, either, in prison for a crime they didn't commit, or just in general in there, and either, being forced to fight fires or make products, and, basically slave labor.
Literally slave labor.
Literally slave labor. The way that people that are pregnant are treated in prison is horrific. I remember in Portland when we were there, they were starting to deny visitation of people's kids to prison. It's all so stupid. So definitely people that dedicate their lives to that are incredibly noble.
Yeah, absolutely.
And yeah, we definitely are in a situation where even it is complicated, the idea of should a violent offender be able to vote. That I think that is complicated, especially if you have been a victim of violent crime.
And the answer, I think, would be if they're not, then they should not be counted as residents of the prison that they live in. They should be counted as residents of wherever they live.
Yeah.
If you're revoked your right to vote, then there's no reason that they should be counted as residents of, Merced or wherever there's...
Yeah, and it's one thing to count someone as a resident, for the census of just, records that they live there, but the fact that we're using that for people...
If they can't vote where they live, which is the prison at this point, then they should be counted as residents of wherever they live still, wherever their home is, wherever their family is. They should be able to be claimed there instead of counted as residents of the prison. If they're counted as residents of the prison, then they should have full rights of residents of the prison.
It's definitely weird that
in government,
houseless people that don't have residences, like they technically can vote. I mean, I remember
they can.
But the great the assembly candidate that we were working with, she grew up homeless, and she was really passionate about helping the homeless. And so I remember canvassing for her and talking to a homeless woman, and talking outside of a library to other homeless people, and asking if they were going to vote. The library has a voting drop-off, all this, and it's like, one, that's the last thing on their mind, and two, they'd have to access the computer in the library, they'd have to have a mailing address to get their ballot, or whatever.
But know this, if you are a resident of the state of California, if you are a citizen of the United States, if you are over the age of 18, and you are not currently imprisoned or on parole, you are allowed to vote. That's it. It doesn't matter what your household status is. Anybody. It doesn't matter what your residence. I mean, if you're a legal resident.
But how do you register?
People will help. Libraries will help. The DMV can help. You can fill out forms. I don't know the exact details, but you are allowed to vote. Do not let anybody take this right from you. That's the T. I think it's important.
No, it is important, but what I was saying was that, I'm, talking to these people about a candidate who wants to, advocate for them.
Yeah.
And, for a lot of them, it's like it was past the time of registering,
Yeah. I mean, look, they don't make it easy.
They don't make it easy.
They don't make it easy.
Just for anyone wondering, I did give them some information and said, you can always reach out to this candidate if you need resources.
The candidate's name is Brandy Grace.
Yeah.
She's probably going to run again. Yeah. So keep an eye out.
Yeah, Brandy Grace, with 2 I's, Brandii.
Yeah.
Grace. Exactly. She's also a video game designer and programmer and educator. It's just so amazing how even people that are allowed to vote, they have all the odds stacked against them,
Yeah, exactly. Even people that it should be very easy, it's very difficult.
Yeah, it's voting needs to be a national holiday. It'd be great if it was a paid holiday.
Yeah.
And it just needs to be easier in every state. It is disgusting how we have people sharing how cool people waited in line for 8 hours, and
awful. You should not have to wait in line for 8 hours. It's the same as those people that are like, oh, this kid raised $100,000 for his grandma's surgery by working as a dishwasher shifts. Or whatever. Isn't that amazing? And it's like, no,
we should not be glorifying
sucks.
This.
That kid is great, good for them. Their character is outstanding, but this is not a feel good story. This sucks.
It's unacceptable.
Yeah.
And so it's one of those things where it's it's so hard to have faith in this process. But, that's where you come in. So...
No, it ain't.
Okay, no. Please.
So the Electoral College. Let's get back into it.
Yeah.
So, very simply, because the Electoral College is just a bunch of people appointed by each state that then doesn't vote, goes and votes... per state, that's how you can end up mathematically with somebody getting the most votes across the country, but losing the Electoral College. And this is becoming a problem for the Democratic Party, specifically.
Why?
Because the Democratic Party's votes are largely centered in big urban areas. The Republican Party's is spread out through rural areas, which means you need to get a lot fewer votes in the Dakotas and Wyoming and Montana to win all 4 of those states. Whereas you can get 4 times as many votes in the city of Los Angeles, but it's one state when it's already blue. Which is why people have talked about, I've seen progressive people say, move to Wyoming. I keep going to Wyoming, but I don't know why. Oh, it's because I read a profile about Liz Cheney earlier, and she's a Wyoming person. But so it's like, move to Wyoming, move to Missouri, move to Kansas. Kansas and Missouri are both potentially moving further to the left.
Make those changes there.
Yeah, and just be a vote there, because your vote counts a lot more. The vote of somebody in South Dakota counts a lot more than yours or mine, because there's fewer people, and all the elections are decided by state, not by individual vote.
It's interesting because I always felt that living in California, that our vote mattered less because it always goes blue.
Yeah.
You know, like, oh, well,
it always goes blue because our votes matter less. It's more the other way around, because if California were a swing state, our votes would matter a whole hell of a lot. But it's not.
What makes something a swing state?
A swing state is a state where the population is such that in any given presidential election, it might go red, it might go blue. So it's competitive. You have to actually win over the voters in that state. Classic swing state, Ohio, Florida. Although Ohio is more of a red state these days. Pennsylvania. This year we're looking at Ohio, Florida, North Carolina, Pennsylvania, Wisconsin, Michigan, and Arizona. Those are the big ones.
It was funny
And
how...
I'm going to go down... Sorry to interrupt you. Before the end of this, I'm going to go down and I'm going to give my predictions of which way those are all going to go. So, hold on tight. Iowa, also.
It's funny how in the most recent debate, Biden mentioned living in Pennsylvania, living in Scranton, right?
Yeah.
And Trump was just like, he was there for a second. He doesn't even go here. Like, he doesn't know about Pennsylvania.
Trump's never lived outside of either, like, Queens, Manhattan, or his estate in Florida.
Yeah, but he's
until
like...
he moved to the White House.
It was just such a petty, stupid thing.
He's a petty, stupid man.
Yeah, that's true. So...
That's why he's got my vote.
no.
Because I am too.
So where in history, what are some examples of where the Electoral College has kind of come into play in a
Well, it comes into play
way?
every year because, and I'll go into like really dramatic examples, but I do want to point out it comes into play every year because this is why elections are only decided by a few states, which means only a few states really matter to these candidates. There's a reason that they don't come here. Well, actually, they come to LA. Democrats come to LA sometimes to fundraise.
And go to Universal Studios.
And to go prostrate before the great minion, the Universal Minion.
Under his eye.
Which is what they have to do in order to win.
Yeah.
They need his blessing.
It's like meeting the Pope.
Yeah, it's
banana.
It's the Hollywood Pope.
Yeah, you need to go under the giant inflatable or not inflatable minion.
I don't know. I've never touched
We've
it.
never
We
touched
haven't
it. We
been
were not
graced
allowed.
enough to
touch it.
But they have to go get butterbeer. So, yeah. So, really, all of their policies, all of their ideas, basically come down to those 5, 6, 7, 8 states, whatever it is, every year. And that's been the case. That's actually been the case throughout all of American history. Which states they are has changed. Because California used to be kind of a swing state.
It was swinging?
It was swinging. It was back in the swinging 60s and later and before. In fact, California... We're going to play a little trivia game.
Whoa.
We're going to play a little trivia game.
It was so swinging that... what's his name? The guy that was arrested. That looks like the Babadook.
Roger Stone?
Yeah. California's so
Roger
swinging.
Stone was paying California to fuck his wife.
Yeah. Roger Stone's a swinger.
Good joke.
Thank you.
You're welcome. When do you think the last time California voted for a Republican was?
Reagan?
It did vote for Reagan, but that wasn't the last time. Voted for Reagan twice.
I don't know.
1988. Only 2 years before I was born, George H.W. Bush won California.
Wow. Didn't he live in California?
George
some
Bush?
points? Yeah.
No. He's a Texas guy.
No, I know. I thought maybe at some points. We need to keep reading Family of Secrets.
We do. Russ Baker's Family Secrets. So that means
All about the Bush crime family.
between 1964 and 1982, Republicans won California every single time.
Wow.
1964, of course, was the huge landslide. The huge landslide Lyndon LBJ destroyed Barry Goldwater.
Blew him out of the Goldwater.
In 1992 was Clinton beating George Bush.
So that was when we became a non-swing state again. Or, I mean,
well, yeah, that's
more of a Democrat-ruled
in
state.
hindsight, that's when it ended. People were still trying to get it until... Basically, a lot of our current setup was sort of solidified by 2000. For example, Bill Clinton also won Louisiana. He won Arkansas. He won Georgia, which is also a swing state this year. He won Missouri. Won Arizona, actually.
I love how you're like Missouri, and then you're like Arizona.
That's how they talk in those two places. I would know. One grandpa's from Missouri, one grandpa's from Arizona. My family. Although they both grew up in Arizona. So a swing state can change. I mean, Virginia used to be a classic swing state, and now it's pretty solidly blue. Same with Colorado and New Mexico. And Nevada. Although Trump's trying for Nevada. It's not going to work, I don't think. I'm not even going to consider it a swing state, really. They're just trying for it. But like George W. Bush won New Mexico, Colorado, Nevada, Virginia, New Hampshire. New Hampshire's a swing state, although since 2000 it's gone blue every time.
It's interesting how a lot of these states I think about differently because everything's different basically when it comes to primaries, right?
Yeah.
So it's like this
Totally
whole
different
other
electorates.
totally different electorates, everything could go in different ways because so it's really interesting.
And Maine is kind of a swing state. It hasn't gone red, but Trump did. So actually this is something now I have to talk about. Oh boy. 2 states don't vote for the Electoral College by just whoever won. Nebraska and Maine. They both vote for the Electoral College proportionally. So, in 2008, Obama won one of Nebraska's votes. Mm-hmm. In 2016, Trump won one of Maine's. So, that can make things a little messier.
Why?
It's just what they do.
Okay.
They're allowed. The states can decide how they do it.
Let the states decide.
They're both weird. So, the most classic example before 2016 of the Electoral College being a real pain in our collective keister and XL pipeline, was 2000. What do you know about the 2000 election?
Oh, God. Well, I was in first grade.
So you were following along
I was
closely.
following pretty closely. I was following all that takes on it.
Nick News with Linda Ellerby.
Yeah. So what you mean? What I know about how it ended up, basically?
Yeah, just like what's your impression of what happened?
My impression of what happened was so Bush v. Gore, Bush v. Go Mortensen. So there was that was the year of the recount, right?
That's right, yeah.
So did it have to do with Florida?
Yeah, it did.
Was this the hanging Chad
This is
situation?
the hanging Chads, that's right.
Okay. Sup, man? Hanging Chad.
Yeah, we're going to start hanging Chads if they don't start voting right.
Whoa.
Whoa.
Okay. So, basically there were, disputes over the voting and, did they basically just declare Bush as the winner and then Gore was like, I want a recount, and then basically just ruined my childhood. Like basically then 9/11 happened. It was just millennials have forever been
It was a real
fucked.
1-2 punch of traumas politically.
Yeah.
You basically got it right. So, and the reason that we call it Bush v. Gore, that's not usually how you refer to these events.
Oh yeah,
It's called
because
Bush
the
v. Gore
Supreme
because it went to the Supreme Court, and that's the name of the court case. Bush v. Gore.
v. Court.
Bush v. Court.
The Bush is in your court. Gore. Okay.
So basically, the election was very close. It's worth pointing out that compared to 2000, Hillary swamped Trump in the popular vote.
It was historic,
Yeah,
right?
the 2000 popular vote is very, very close still. It's like by 1% or so. And Gore lost some states that he was expected to win.
Like what?
New Hampshire,
Wow.
Tennessee, his home state. He lost Colorado, Nevada. Clinton had won Arizona just the year before. Clinton won Montana. And Gore lost all of these.
So Bush
Georgia?
was very popular because of his dad.
Yeah.
Was his dad pretty popular, right?
Not when he left.
Not when he
after
left,
he left,
but then
he was-
after...
It wasn't as polarized a time, so people didn't have the same, like, vicious hatred.
Yeah, and then after Clinton leaving office in
The
a little bit of
impeachment.
ignominy,
Yeah.
then it was like, we need a good Bush.
And Bush seemed likable. He was charismatic.
You could have a beer with him.
You could if he wasn't
sober. Yeah.
Um,
You could have some Coke with
This
him.
is the first time since Prohibition, by the way, that both candidates this year are teetotalers.
Oh, yeah.
Neither drank. In fact, the only one that does on the entire ticket is Kamala, because Mike Pence doesn't either. Boring. So Bush was popular. He was likable. Ironically, one of the things part of his platform was a more restrained foreign policy. Because, we will get into all of this probably later, maybe, but Clinton, did the bombings in Kosovo, and all the Black Hawk Down stuff in Ethiopia happened under him. There was actually a lot of stuff in Bosnia. So Bush was like, we gotta be a more restrained foreign policy. And his buzzword, his catchphrase was compassionate conservatism.
Dang.
Which was basically the idea of like...
It's a good line.
It is. He was like, just because we're conservative doesn't mean we can't invest in education. Doesn't mean we can't invest in our seniors and making sure we've got Social Security all safe. It was that kind of almost big government conservatism. Mm-hmm. And people responded to it. And Gore, he wasn't disliked. Like, he was kind of a punchline, but so was Bush. People called Gore a boring nerd. Bush was a dumb cowboy, But Gore just had to thread a needle that was very difficult to thread, which is that Clinton was a reasonably successful president, right? The country was in good shape at the end of the 90s, but he was personally kind of unpopular, but not among Democrats.
And Gore was the Veep.
And Gore was his vice president, for 8 years.
So it's like, okay, 4 more years of this same guy, basically.
Yeah. And to a lot of Americans, that sounded great.
Yeah.
Because
like people being like, ooh, Biden is basically
Obama.
white old Obama.
Yeah. Because the Clinton impeachment was very partisan.
Yeah.
And it was one of the earliest things of our current era, where Republicans were all against Clinton, Democrats fell in line behind him. And so that was a hard thing for Gore to figure out. How do I appeal to these Democrats that think Clinton was railroaded and that are celebrating our strong economy and how things are going well, while also appealing to independents that maybe don't like Bill Clinton personally? One of the ways that he tried to do that was with his running mate, Mr. Joseph Lieberman, senator from Connecticut. The first Jewish candidate on a major party ticket, although Barry Goldwater and John Kerry both have Jewish heritage. They were not actually Jewish, though. So Lieberman was a staunch critic of Bill Clinton's.
Didn't Lieberman used to be a Republican?
No, he was always a Democrat.
Okay.
But he became an independent later in his career.
Oh.
And was an independent after the 2008 election. He became an independent.
Okay.
But he was always friendly with Republicans. He was famously vetted to be McCain's running mate in 2008.
That's what I was thinking of, which is insane.
Because McCain and Lieberman were like best friends in the Senate. And he probably would have picked him if he had his druthers.
McCain could have potentially won.
It's probably one of the only things that could have saved that campaign.
That's weird. Okay.
But so, yeah, Lieberman was a staunch critic of Clinton's in the Senate.
He didn't leave him.
He didn't leave him very much. He supported, I don't know if he supported the impeachment, but he was very critical of his conduct.
Which is funny because isn't Lieberman also like a sex creep a little, or cheated on his cancer wife?
No, that's John Edwards. I think it's John Edwards.
I mixed them up.
We'll get into Edwards too. We can talk about John Edwards, but totally different guy.
Okay.
Completely
John
different.
Edwards, big psychic, big medium. No, I'm just kidding.
That's right. John
Edward
was one of the finalists to be Gore's running mate in 2000.
Okay, so that's why they then had him be Kerry's running.
Well, Edwards ran in 2004. and he came in second place to Kerry.
Oh, okay.
Which is why. So that was a Biden-Kamala kind of thing, or even Obama-Biden. They were all people that ran in the same primary.
Okay.
But so Gore's shortlist was basically John Kerry, who was a popular senator from Massachusetts, John Edwards, who was an up-and-coming and actually relatively progressive and populist senator from North Carolina, Joe Lieberman, and in hindsight, the person who probably should have picked, Bob Graham, the at the time popular senator from Florida.
Oh no! I was like, Bob Graham, what's his significance? And I was like, oh, it's
Florida.
Choose a fucking
Choose the
person from
Floridian.
Florida, please.
Yeah, maybe Romney should have picked Rubio in 2012. It was also shortlisted. But so, and also Gore didn't have a competitive primary in 2000, which may have hurt him a bit. His only real competitor was Bill Bradley, who's a senator from New Jersey and former star basketball player.
What?
He ran to Gore's left, yeah. And
Literally. Because he was a star basketball.
And he dunked on it.
Yeah.
And Bush also didn't have a super competitive primary, but he did have one big competitor, John McCain, in 2000.
Ooh.
And McCain ran to Bush's left. Because one of his big things was public financing of elections.
Oh, God.
And
What an alternate.
yeah,
history.
Bush, for the South Carolina primary, Bush ran an ad suggesting that McCain had an illegitimate black child because of, I believe, a child that he had adopted. But he ran a race-baiting ad suggesting that McCain had cheated on his wife with a black person. And he lost South Carolina. And McCain never really forgave the Bush family for that.
I wonder, alternate history of if McCain won and actually pushed forward the idea of campaign finance reform.
Yeah.
And I wonder if 9/11 would have happened, and I wonder...
It probably would have happened.
And I wonder what his response would be, because he's plenty hawkish.
Yeah, but I don't think he would have gone to
hawkish,
war
but
with Iraq.
Yeah, but he actually has military experience. And
Yeah, I don't think we would have gone to war
I
with
don't think
Iraq.
he would have had been able to have as many people in his ear.
Yeah, I don't think we would have gone to war with Iraq under anybody except Bush. I think we would have gone to war with Afghanistan probably no matter what.
Bush was the perfect patsy for the war.
Yeah, well, and it was completing his dad's legacy.
Yeah, it's true.
Because Bush Sr. got to 90% approval during Desert Storm, which was the first war in Iraq that we were in. But yeah, no, the McCain thing is a very interesting alternate history for sure, because the difference made in public financing could have been huge. Who knows? I've similarly, we've talked about, I wonder if Romney had won in 2012, if we would have ended up with Trump at all.
Yeah, if Republicans would have kind of gotten out of their system
and if Trump just aged out of it. I don't think that he could have waited another cycle or two.
That'd be pretty funny.
I mean, even now his life expectancy is another 11 years actuarially. Like 85, I think, is the man his age.
That's how long we'll be doing Trump Watch.
God.
Okay, so back to
but
Bush
the
v.
2000
Gore.
election. Yeah, so 2000. Sorry,
So it was
we got
actually pretty close.
It was very close, much closer than people often remember. But so it all came out of Florida. What happened was they called Florida for Gore. Mm-hmm. And all the news...
Like, hello, Florida.
Florida, it's Gore. All the news channels called it for Gore. The entire election. They said Gore wins. You can look it up. There's all these news people being like, and we are ready to project that Vice President Al Gore will be the next president of the United States.
It sounded like you said nude people, but I know you meant news people.
No, I meant nude.
Okay, because they're in Florida, and in Florida,
it's crazy there.
It's hot.
And so then within a few hours, they were like actually in, I believe it was in Palm Beach County, Florida. It turns out the results were actually so close that it triggers an automatic recount, which is standard practice in election counting. Mm-hmm. If it's within like 0.5%, there's an automatic recount.
Yeah.
So they were like, okay, we have to pull our call of Gore and the presidency. Mm-hmm. And so basically this process actually drags on for weeks of recounting. And there became all these structural problems. I mean, one is the famous hanging chads, which at this time, when you filled out your ballot in Florida, you punched a hole through the thing that you were through the ballot.
So fucking mad. You're like,
yeah, you punched it. No, you had a little stylus and you punched a hole through it. Uh-huh. And there were lawsuits about whether or not the Chad, which is the bit that comes out of the hole punch, whether it had to be all the way gone to be counted as a vote. Bush's
By
lawyers,
the machine.
by the hand-counted people, whether they were able to count it. Because there was questions about whether or not the people that were hand-counting for the recounts, whether they were allowed to use their judgment of intent.
Yeah.
And so they would say, like, well, it's clear that they tried to poke it out here, but it didn't go all the way through.
Yeah.
And so they said, well, we don't count it.
Similar to the, did you fill the bubble in all the way?
Exactly like that. Did you put it in the secrecy sleeve? All these different ways they can find to undo it. They also famously lost a bunch of ballots in Gore-heavy counties in Florida.
They're like, gators got them. Sorry.
Yeah. Some counties had what were called butterfly ballots, where they kind of open up down the middle. And these are very confusing.
Yeah.
And
I personally am not good at folding things.
yeah. But so there were a bunch of heavily Jewish and liberal districts where Pat Buchanan, who has a reputation for anti-Semitism, won hundreds, if not thousands, of votes. And his name on the butterfly ballot was right next to Gore's. And even Pat Buchanan said, I don't think I won these votes. Pat Buchanan said, I'm pretty sure these people were trying to vote for Gore and accidentally voted for me instead. So that was another thing.
What party was Pat Buchanan running for?
The Reform Party.
Okay, so yeah, it's like, he definitely
He was very
not-
famous.
Yeah.
Like, he was a very famous he wasn't even the most famous third party candidate that year. That was Nader, of course.
Yeah.
But he was very famous because he had been a Republican candidate in 1992, and he didn't in 96, but 92 he came very close. And so all of these things combine to create this nightmare.
God.
And the recounting it. And basically, Gore is suing to continue the recount up until the very, very end.
Mm-hmm. He's suing the state of Florida.
Yeah. Because the state of Florida keeps trying to stop the recount.
Yeah.
And remember that the Florida Secretary of State at the time, and the Secretary of State of a state is who counts the ballots, who runs the elections, was the chair of the Bush 2000 campaign in Florida. And the governor of Florida at the time was
Jeb
Bush. He was governor at the time. So the state's saying, no, basically the state is saying, like, we've got to stop. We've got to stop counting because there's too much. It's too much. We got to just call a winner.
If only Gore had chosen Jeb to be his brother.
Yeah, Jeb Gore.
Jeb Gore.
And so this lawsuit goes all the way to the Supreme Court.
All the way to the
All
top.
the way to the top. And the Supreme Court rules less than a week before the hard deadline. Because like we said earlier, there is a hard deadline to when voting has to stop.
Yeah.
Less than a week before, they say, it's not possible to finish counting all of these votes in time, so you have to stop now. They say it's a 14th Amendment violation. The 14th Amendment says that all citizens will be treated equally under the law. And they say because you're now only targeting Palm Beach County, and because they have different election ballot setups than the rest of Florida, you are violating the 14th Amendments of these people by singling them out for recount, basically. Which means that if Gore had pushed to have a statewide recount, they may not have ruled that way.
Yeah.
So this was I think a very slim vote, and actually Ruth Bader Ginsburg wrote a blistering dissent, saying like, this is not acceptable. This is not a thing that the Supreme Court should be doing. The case is so stupid that in the text of the decision they say this cannot be used as a precedent because the U.S., like the U.K., our daddy, is under a common law system, and a common law system means that law is based on precedent legally.
A Kamala system.
And they say this can't be used as precedent. So effectively, they install George W. Bush as president. And of course, once the counting is all done, it's found that first of all, if Palm Beach County had been recounted, Bush still would have won.
Wow.
He won Palm Beach County. But if the entire state of Florida had been recounted, Gore would have won.
Oh my God.
And then of course they find out that Gore did win more votes ultimately than George W. Bush did. But Bush wins, and he gets reelected in 2004, right? And he actually wins in 2004. I mean, there's concerns about the counting machines in Ohio, but he does win the popular vote in 2004. That election is the only election in our lifetime for the presidency where a Republican won the most votes. 2004.
Wow.
Before that, it was 1988.
So where does the Electoral College come in?
If it weren't for the Electoral College, it wouldn't matter who won Florida. It wouldn't matter who won any state. You wouldn't count it by state. You would
just count it by how many votes.
Results of how many votes they received.
Dang.
And so because Gore won the most votes, he would become the president.
But because Florida...
But because Florida has 29 electoral votes, that was enough to tip it either way. It only mattered who won Florida. Didn't matter who won any other states at that point. It didn't matter who won the most votes at all. It only mattered who won Florida. So, that's the Electoral College. I mean, basically, that's how it works. The electors from each state, they put in whoever wins their state, and they tally that up. They do not count the popular vote. The popular vote does not matter. The national popular vote doesn't matter to the election. Now, in polling, it can be an important indicator of overall support. For example, Joe Biden has something like a 9-point lead on Trump. That implies that in swing states, which are competitive states, he will probably have a good chance at winning them because he has a broad level of support nationally.
Right.
Biden does. But, and here's the important thing, gang, Donald Trump can win the presidency.
Ugh.
Nobody thinks he's going to get the popular vote. Basically, everybody writes that off already. But he can still win. All he has to do is hold what he won in 2016, and he can even lose one or two. Because the Electoral College right now has a built-in Republican advantage. And that goes back to what we were saying before about how most Democratic votes right now are in large urban areas, which means they are concentrated. That means that there is a much wider number of states that Republicans win. Automatically. It's built in. It's the rural advantage. Which is why you see those maps that break it down by county. And they show huge swaths of red, right? And Republicans share this. Instead of the Electoral College map, they show these maps that are broken down by county. Every county is red, basically, and there's a couple blue ones. And they say, you're telling me people don't want Trump? And it's like most of those red counties have like 8 people living in them. But the votes of those 8 people means that county goes red. And if that happens in a state, that means that state goes red. And that's how you can have a state like Montana, the Dakotas, Wyoming, I think Idaho. These states combined have a smaller population than the city of Los Angeles.
So what are people supposed to do?
Well, there's a movement to obviously abolish the Electoral College, which would require a constitutional amendment. There's a movement to mandate that the winner of each state doesn't just go for whoever votes for their state, but has to go for whoever wins the popular vote. Yeah. That is something that's happened.
So they have to go for not like if someone won the popular vote, but the state went for someone else, they would still have to vote for the popular vote. Okay.
That's a movement that's been put forward. You can try to move. I don't know. There's not a lot you can do, really.
And then what?
There's vote swapping. That's something that I know Penn Jillette did in Nevada in 2016.
Oh.
Where somebody in a swing state, Penn Jillette in Nevada in 2016, swaps their vote with somebody in a solid state. So the example that he said is that a friend of his lived in California, and Penn Jillette said, if you vote for Gary Johnson in California, I'll vote for Hillary in Nevada. And I'll help Nevada flip to her.
It's kind of awesome.
Yeah, and he did that.
And, you know, as much as, like, whether you agree with a third-party candidate, you know, if it isn't going to affect the winners of the actual election, it does not hurt to get enthusiasm and involvement and legitimizing toward a third party.
Yeah,
because that system is so...
Yeah, I mean, I'm third-party skeptical. Because there are institutional barriers to getting on ballots, staying on ballots, to governing, legislating. There's, I think, much bigger structural changes that need to take place before you go on for a third party. But Yeah, I mean, vote for third party if you'd like.
Where did Nader come into place with the 2000 election? Come into play with the 2000 election?
You mean like why are people mad at him?
Yeah, and especially with, everything that you just described. None of that had to do with Nader.
Well,
so.
the argument is that if Nader didn't exist, all of his voters would have voted for Gore. And then Gore would have won more states. And it would have been close. Now, of course, nobody gets mad at Pat Buchanan, who is a right-wing independent candidate. Nobody gets mad at the numerous Democrats that voted for Bush. They just blame Nader.
Sorry, Nader.
Sorry, Nader. I like Nader. Nader, you're cool. You're cool by us. This is a
thought
pro
for good, Nader.
Yeah, this is a pro Nader podcast.
Pro Mater from
This is a
the
pro-
Cars movies.
A pro Nader podcast. Ralph Nader's sister worked at my high school. She's a teacher
What's
there.
her name?
I don't remember.
Miss Mater? Miss Nader?
Yeah, Miss Mater.
Mater.
I don't remember. I never met her.
So what would Joe or Trump, if you were their campaign manager, what would you do? What would you be focusing on to ensure that they win?
I would try to get Biden more support among Latino voters, and black voters too, both of which are lagging a little bit compared to Hillary. But I think that he's done a really good job of getting back a lot of white working class voters in the Rust Belt, which is arguably more important for the Electoral College right now. If I were Trump's campaign manager,
You would
I would
end things.
I'd be found dead in a hotel room. I would tell him that he needs to work on solidifying his base and targeting Latino voters. Honestly, probably. I think that Latino voters are a huge factor this election, and neither candidate is really killing it with them. But honestly, I think Biden's running a good campaign. Honestly, I think that he's basically doing the right thing, which is letting Trump run the story. As long as Trump's as long as Trump is the story, Biden wins, because Trump's not popular. People don't like it, and that's panning out. I mean, Trump looks poised to win Wisconsin and Michigan back at least, which would be enough to win. Yeah, and also one thing I want to say before I get into my predictions, because we're almost an hour and a half, is there is always the risk of faithless electors in the Electoral College, which is that technically, unless you're in a state that mandates that you vote for whoever won their state, an elector can just go vote for whoever they want.
Yeah.
Literally whoever they want. Which happened in 2016. There were a number, I believe 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. I think there was like 10. There were 7 faithless electors in 2016. Which means that not only did Donald Trump get his 304 electoral votes, Hillary Clinton get her 227, but also Colin Powell received several Electoral College votes. A Native American activist named Faith Spotted Eagle won an Electoral College vote, being the first Native American female to win an Electoral College vote of any kind.
Whoa.
Ron Paul got an Electoral College vote. John Kasich got an Electoral College vote. Bernie got 2, I think. And what's interesting is that means that if it did go to a tie, or there was no winner, any one of those people could have won in the recount.
This is such a great system.
Great system. The first ever woman to receive an Electoral College vote at all was Antonia Nathan, who was the Libertarian Party's vice president in 1972, I believe.
Dang.
Maybe 76. And a faithless elector just voted for her. Or voted for them instead, the ticket. In 2004, a faithless elector accidentally voted for John Edwards for president instead of John Kerry. They're not sending their best to the Electoral College.
Oh my god.
But so that's always a thing. And I remember in 2016, they were like saying the Electoral College should just vote for Hillary. Like, just fuck it. Just pick Hillary. That would not have gone over well.
Yeah.
But that's something that they can do. So, do you feel like you have a better handle on the Electoral College? It's a lot. It's a lot of information.
Yes.
Is there any outstanding questions we can answer before we get into our brief election analysis?
I don't think so. I think definitely, after the election, there will be lots to discuss about it. And, if any listeners have any specific questions, please feel free to reach out.
Yeah. I think the most likely option for the abolition of the Electoral College would be in the same way that Reconstruction ended, which was in 1876. It was unclear who won the presidency, and so after a lot of back and forth, they decided to let Rutherford B. Hayes, the Republican president,
behave.
They decided to let him be the president in exchange for the end of Reconstruction in the South. A terrible, terrible deal, by the way. One of the worst deals. One of the absolute worst things that's happened in American history, to be honest. I could see that happening. If, for example, Donald Trump loses the popular vote, wins the Electoral College vote, or there's any confusion, I could see a deal being made saying, we'll let Donald Trump be the president again, but we're getting rid of the Electoral College for the future. And I think that could happen, not this time necessarily, but I feel like that's the likeliest path to completely get rid of the Electoral College.
Yeah.
It's some kind of grand bargain. So, you have no other outstanding questions?
No.
Are you ready to talk about the big game?
Yeah, let's get into it.
I call it the big game because that's what you have to call the Super Bowl. You're not allowed to call things the Super Bowl. So every commercial, because it's copyrighted and they will sue.
Oh, okay. I thought you meant it's like Macbeth.
No.
You can't say the Super Bowl.
No. It's just that it's copyrighted, so every commercial and stuff just has to be about the big game, and I think that's really funny. So we are going to do our election coverage on Tuesday for many hours, and it's going to be fun. We're going to have a lot of fun, and all three of our hosts, that's me, Lucia, and our temporary co-host for that day, Chris Hodamy, we're going to bring our predictions for our 270towin.com electoral maps. But I'm going to let the real heads get a little peek behind the kimono on this one. And I'm going to go down the list. Well, I'll just say straight up, I think Biden's going to win. I think he's going to win with 357 electoral votes to Trump's 181. That is what I think. Now let's talk turkey. Do you want to talk some turkey?
I would love some turkey right now. I just want to skip to Thanksgiving.
Some stress turkey?
Stress turkey. Just tryptophan me, baby.
So here are the swing states.
Yeah.
That are most important. Pennsylvania, Ohio, Wisconsin, Michigan, Minnesota, kind of, Iowa, Arizona, Nevada, kind of, North Carolina, Florida, Georgia, and Texas. Those are the big swing states. Mm-hmm. I think that Donald John Drumpf, of that list, is going to win Ohio and Texas.
Wow.
I think Trump's going to keep Texas. I think Joseph Robinette Biden Jr.
Joseph Robin the Cradle.
I think he's going to win Pennsylvania, Michigan, Wisconsin, Nevada, Florida, North Carolina, Arizona, and Georgia. That is what I think.
Okay. I'm just biting my thumbs, rubbing my temples. There's a lot of trying to cope with
the stress of it all.
The stress
and I also think Biden's going to win Nebraska's 2nd district. That's the area around Omaha, where he's polling fairly well.
Okay. Penny just went, "Ah," and she's curling up.
Any to quote Halloween hero David S. Pumpkins, any questions?
I don't know why I thought you were going to quote Hubie Halloween. But I was like, what does he say? To
quote Halloween hero Hubie Halloween, that's my thermos.
That's kind of... Okay, that was also a little I hope so. I am not saying in any type of endorsement of Joe Biden, but just in an anti-endorsement of Trump. I guess the enemy is better than the enemy that is Trump. I guess I don't know, but I saw today, what was the thing that like Trump saying that he's going to announce his win regardless. What was I sent that to you?
Yeah, what I saw was he basically is going if it looks like he might win, if there's any uncertainty on election night, he's just going to declare victory that night.
What scares me is not like what I don't like about that is Trump has a way of just saying things and making them happen and come into fruition. Not in a way that's ever been positive for the American people, like, I'm going to stop pre-existing conditions. Not in that way.
Yeah.
But of just being like...
He is a dark magician of a kind.
Yeah, and so he's forceful. He's successful at just, if, I worry that if before the votes are counted, if he just goes like, I won, they're just going to let that
This is why I voted
happen.
for Biden, and this is why I won't endorse Joe Biden, but I will advocate for the voting of Joe Biden, which is that the only way to prevent him from doing this is to make the results on Tuesday unambiguous.
Yeah.
To have the hugest repudiation possible in the popular and electoral vote. If it's close, they can steal it. Right now, I don't think this will be close enough to even try. I really don't. But I've been wrong before. I thought Hillary was going to win. Now, granted,
You're often not wrong, though. Even with
you.
Oscars, but especially with
Pretty good with the Oscars. But I was going to say, I do want to toot my own horn for a moment.
Toot toot.
Toot toot. Which is that I did take Trump a lot more seriously than a lot of people did in 2016.
Yes, he absolutely, besides predicting, or being on the precipice of the Bernie campaign before it was even a campaign, Kyle very much took Trump seriously and his popularity seriously.
I always thought he could win the primary, and I always thought he had a shot at the presidency.
Yeah, and you have to take your enemy seriously. Like,
So if he wins,
like
we just gotta fall in line. And because obviously he gets something we don't.
Oh God. Trump has really just been warning us about aliens, and he just really cares.
The two craziest options for this is Biden wins handily. They announce it the night of. It all ends quietly and anticlimactically. Or something happens that reveals that Trump has been right the entire time about everything. Those are the two craziest options. So bet on one of those.
Yeah, like literally aliens come down. We
And
have
he's
to
like,
fight
"This
them
is
with
why
the
I had
Space
Space
Force.
Force.
And
I was trying to tell you. But they were trying to Russiagate me.
the aliens come down with their Rona guns, start shooting everybody. And then the masks, keep us from being able to scream for help.
Yeah.
And
So-
and he was right about it all.
Let's just hope that it all works out.
And we will be here,
Holding each other's hand.
holding each other's hands, holding your hands, audibly, orally.
Orally.
Orally. That's how pirates do
Yeah, that's
things.
right.
And so thank you once again for sticking around.
Yeah. How you feel, Luke? You feel okay? You seem stressed.
I'm doing great. I'm just
All
gonna
right.
bury my head into
Yeah, we're gonna go.
our cat's belly.
Gonna go open wine bottles and rub our faces in the cat.
Yeah, so we hope that you have a cat or an equivalent of a cat that you can rub your face in.
I hope that for you.
And take an allergy pill while you're at it. Kyle, do you feel okay? How are you?
I feel fine. I'm
feel fine?
perfectly sanguine about it. It's gonna go how it goes. I'm pretty
Yeah.
zen right now. Honestly, I'm at a point where I'm pretty zen.
Honestly, whatever happens, like if Biden wins, and we know immediately and it's accepted, I think either way there's gonna be, that civil unrest and the sort of clashing between Proud Boys and Black Lives Matter and this, like those types of issues have been brewing for a very long time.
They existed during the Obama administration. The Proud Boys didn't, but this kind of
and so
unrest.
like that's very scary, but I think that and I think people will be enraged and inflamed no matter what.
Yeah.
But so like we just need to be aware that whatever happens, that's not gonna not happen. But that also,
And whatever happens, it's not over.
it's not it's not over. There's still incredible progress being made. I am hoping for some great local elections having new progressive leadership, and so it's like,
And if Trump does win, Marianne 2024.
oh, visualize Marianne Williamson.
At that point, that's the only person I think could beat Trump.
Seriously. Yeah, the drugs that they gave Trump to survive the Rona are just gonna make him super strong.
It would be
and continue to live
unbelievably
forever.
funny if, like, the thing is, if his he seems like he's fine from the Rona, which shakes my faith in a lot of things deeply. But if he did follow the Herman Cain path, the big event would happen after the election.
Yeah.
So that things could just get weirder and weirder from here on out.
Yeah.
So I don't know. Please join us on Tuesday and we'll get through this together.
Keep calm and carry schlong. Carry dong. Hang.
Keep calm and hang brain.
Yeah.
We love you.
We love you.
Have a great weekend.
Yeah. See you
Next Tuesday. Bye.